Welcome to another episode of Fixing Your Club. This time we're going to be concentrating on Gloucester Rugby. Gloucester have had a really unusual and interesting season so far, sitting second from bottom in the league and are now firmly surplus to the chasing pack. However, the form table would really dictate otherwise, with Gloucester picking up 5 wins from their last 8 games in all competitions, which sits them pretty evenly within this hyper-competitive league and in the top 5 within the form table. They were really hamstrung by a terrible start to the season, in which they went over 4 months without recording a win in the Premiership, and played some pretty uninspiring and quite frankly strange rugby along the way. Despite their points difference being the second worst in the league with them now negative 102 at point of writing, their defence was never really the issue. They've made 1,936 tackles so far this season, which is only second to Northampton and nearly 100 more than a Bristol side who also had the same indifferent start to the league. Despite shipping the second most amount of tries with 56, these largely came in flurries in matches they were already losing in the second half, and largely off of the back of very poor territory kicking. Their sputtering attack and game management appeared to be the immediate issue for me, with an inability to create and execute and an even worse record of closing out games. They've scored just 39 tries so far this season, joint second least with Sale, and when Zammit decided to make that hop stateside, it felt like the end was near for Skivington. But in all actuality, this, amongst many other changes, might have contributed towards better compatibility with their game management style. Gloucester kicked from hand less than anybody in the top half of the league, with Carreras being a playmaking fly half rather than a pragmatic one. And although the league has a strong highlight reel of attacking rugby, the cornerstone of the Premiership lies within intense kicking battles, which Gloucester haven't even shown up for. If you balance that with a lack of creativity and poor returns on territory, Gloucester are spending more time than anyone defending between their own 10-metre line and 22-metre line. Zammit was the occasional foil to this though, being one of the very few operators able to break the line and relieve the pressure with his solo efforts. Despite all this, Stephen Varney is 4th in the league for the most kicks out of hand himself, just 3 off of Ben Spencer above him, showing that play is clearly being dictated off of 9 and not 10, despite the 10 choosing to be this flashy distributor, which indicates a pretty muddled game plan. Varney is an excellent kicker too, and he is being used in a similar combination with Garbisi at international level to far greater success. So why has it worked for them and not for Gloucester? Well, it's a complicated concoction of poor kick chase, poor defensive/pressure decision making, over-reliance on individuals to get them out of jail, which then creates fatigue in the final 20 minutes, which is when Gloucester's defence finally begin to buckle and they ship points in those flurries I mentioned earlier. Is it any wonder why Skivington was struggling to solve this problem halfway through the season? So when you look at that, what is the first thing that you would say to solve? Well, it has to be the issue at 9 and 10 and this disrupting of the game plan. Carreras is a really good example of what you get when you put a back 3 player operating at a 10 position, just as we've seen Furbank do for Northampton at stages over the last 2 seasons. Exceptional attacking ability, no hesitation in taking the ball to line, and relatively good creative numbers. That's why fans love him, and that's why he won Coach's Player of the Season last year. He has 3 tries, he has 5 try assists, but he's only kicked 77 times from hand so far this season, which is remarkably low, and 74 points scored across this campaign. However, compare those stats to a player leading the way this league season in Finn Smith. 1 try, 10 try assists, which admittedly is one of the highest in the league, but he has over 110 kicks from hand and 101 points scored so far this season. You wouldn't say that Northampton are any less creative or that they play more boring rugby than Gloucester by any means, but Carreras just doesn't have the finishes outside of him that Northampton has. The creativity just isn't sparking with the centres either, and he would be far more exciting as a weapon out wide, using that try-scoring ability and sparking attack in looser channels. So what have Gloucester done to improve upon these dilemmas? Well, Gloucester already have solved this issue temporarily, with Gareth Anscombe coming to the club as a free agent at 33 years old. You aren't going to get season-on-season growth from him, but you will realign the game plan between 9 and 10 and create a kicking/game management hub. With the highly rated Charlie Atkinson coming through below them too, Gloucester have a strong strategic solution to this problem bubbling away for the next season as long as everybody stays fit. For Ospreys, Gareth Anscombe was comfortably scoring more than 100 100 points a season, he kicked from hand over 120 times per season, and still has one of those really strong distribution profiles that you really want. Charlie Atkinson also has great distribution qualities and has no fear in taking the ball to line. He's also a great tackler for a young standoff, but he does have the odd disciplinary issue on the pitch with a couple of poorly timed attempts previously. Thomas Williams is also joining the club in what is probably the shock signing of the season. He was one of the best nines in the competition this Six Nations, and even when everything was falling apart around him, he snatched and firmly cemented himself as the number one for Wales moving forward. At 29 years old, he's clearly been hunted as a real peak player for this Gloucester side moving into next season. And what I love about him is his consistency. 1,400 minutes played so far this season, 1,500 minutes last season, 1,200 minutes a season before that. He just gets through an enormous amount of rugby. And it all makes sense as a safeguarding pick too, as Benetton and Zebra have been hoovering up the Italian qualified players so far this season, with the likes of Louis Liner going over there. However, Adogwu and many others have joined them over the past few seasons, so it feels like Stephen Varney is the next obvious pick to head over there, or that he could even be a great pickup for the likes of Rugby Club Vin, who are challenging for promotion in the Pro D2. Englefield also looks like a good prospect coming through, so the balance between him and Williams could prove to be a nice piece of 4-year-long cyclical business. And then there was another shock signing in the veteran Christian Wade, who will be rejoining the league with Gloucester next season. And as a lifelong Wade fan who coincidentally showed me around my secondary school as I was growing up, I'm very excited to see what he can do. Now, he doesn't solve anything long term at 33 years old, but in his pomp he was a 15-try-a-season winger and one of the best finishers in league history. You won't get much kick chase or intelligent game management from a player like that, but Gloucester do need raw physical attributes to really turn them into a challenging side, and he has that in buckets. He's had a relatively okay season so far with Racing, scoring 3 tries in limited minutes, but it feels like a real intention signing from a side that really want to get the fan base singing again. With that in mind, I think the backline should shape up as follows: 9 Williams, 10 Anscombe, 11 Thorley, 12 Atkinson, 13 Llewellyn, 14 Wade, and 15 Carreras. With the exception of Thorley, it's not a huge backline, but you have so much experience, creativity, kicking ability, and a grafter in Llewellyn in there, with the likes of Varney, Atkinson, and Harris to come off of the bench to support. You could easily see that lineup in the top 4 next season. The forwards, however, is where I'd look to put in some real work. Gloucester have had a strong scrum and a decent platform at the line-out for a number of years, but it's definitely beginning to decline now. In that front row alone, Val Rapava-Ruskin, despite being unplayable on his day, has just had a few too many injuries to be relied upon now, and for a full season's charge in particular. Santi Cecino will also be leaving to join Agen next season. Jack Singleton is currently on loan at Toulon, having a great season, so I'm unsure why he would necessarily want to come back. Gosotsev is 36 years old and still starting 15 games a season. Balmain is great, but at 32 he's hardly young blood. Jamal Ford-Robinson is an excellent impact sub, but he's unlikely to be a starter for a top 6 club, and at 30 he's coming into his prime years as a front rower, so I can't see any further movement or development there. Seville, Knight and Vivas are all decent prospects, but it isn't really heavy hitting enough for me. So even though he's one of the first people you'd put down on a team sheet heading into any game, the near to long term replacement for Fraser Balmain is where I would start, with hopes that Rapava-Ruskin returns back to his best at 31 years old next season on the other side. On the loosehead side, you already have Vivas and Elrington for depth, even if Rapava-Ruskin doesn't fire, but I'm a little less hopeful about the first team capabilities of Knight and Ford-Robinson to cover purely tight head. I just think that duo is slightly weaker. So here is my rugby hipster take. Get in the Spanish international John Zabala from Béziers in the Pro D2. There are some absolute monsters in that crop of Pro D2 talent coming through, with the average weight of a front rower in that league being close to 19.5 stone, with Big John being north of that. He is 20 stone 2 pounds and around 6'4". He is absolutely enormous. Béziers are flying in the Pro D2 currently, fighting for the title and for promotion into next season. Not only are they one of the more attractive, free-flowing sides, but their front row is absolutely nasty, full of old-school scrubbaging titans. Zabala has put in 18 starts and featured in 25 games so far this season, putting in more minutes than anyone in that Gloucester front row with 1,230 minutes under his belt. He came through the system at an exciting Bayonne side, but it's taken the 27-year-old until this season season to truly break through, which is far more normal on the continent than it is here in the UK. His contract has yet to go through the renewal stages. He wouldn't break the bank coming from the second division, especially before any confirmations of promotions, and a year or two under Balmain as Gloucester kick forth a top 4 challenge might get him ready to make a dent in the English Premiership. Being a big, horrible, hard bloke just feels like a great fit for that Gloucester front row. I'd also look to get in a hooker, as with Cecino leaving, that brings the squad back down to just 2 options in McBurney and McGuigan. You would hope that Singleton returns to pick up that mantle, but there is no harm in bringing in a championship squad option to cover Prem Cup games and support through injury crises. Suva Maasi is having a great season at Coventry Rugby, providing them with a wicked platform that has helped see them rise to second in the table. He's a 26-year-old who carries incredibly aggressively and has impressed season upon season across his time with Cornish Pirates as an apprentice and now with Coventry Rugby. Like all great hookers, he started his career in the backline in the centres and then moved into a mobility forward role after he left Peterborough Lions. Both of his brothers play rugby at a high level for Saints and one previously that came through the Wasp system, and his dad also played for Tonga. Yet to have any coverage on when/if his contract has been extended, so if you swoop in quickly, he could provide a different option to the stalwarts that are currently available. At second row, the depth of specialism there is really slight, with Jordan, Freddie Clark and Alamano as your only real specialists in the squad, and Arthur Clark is set to return after a successful loan at Hartpury. Realistically, despite them being grafters, this is a relatively weak group of locks considering the quality available elsewhere in the league. So I'm interested in bringing in one relatively young matchday 23 member to inject some physicality into that combination. So the person that I picked is Jack Dung from Exeter. I think he is the guy that I would be heavily sniffing around, as I think he's an extraordinarily exciting prospect. Exeter have a ridiculous amount of depth at second row, with 7 immediately available options to cover 4 and 5. Dunn's opportunities have been few and far between, but the Irishman is absolutely ready for the step up. At just 25 years old, he's 6'8" and 19 stone 2 pounds, and has been highly effective at crucial moments for this Exeter side. He scored the winning try against Munster with an unbelievable kick chase and rip, and he played really well against London Scottish in the Premiership Rugby Cup. He originally came through at Leinster, and it will be really important to stop the provinces sniffing around to bring him back, especially now he's had first team exposure. Realistically, would he be a superstar signing? Potentially not, but he does have the raw ability to become one in the future, and he could definitely be used in the first team squad for games into next season. The last piece I would look to bring in is potentially a new attack coach. James Lightfoot Brown has been around the league for a while, originally coaching at London Irish before making the move over. Unfortunately, a big weak point in this Gloucester side over the last 2 seasons has been the lack of cohesion and direction in attack. He can only be blamed for this season, but what came beforehand was also disappointing. It's very reliant on individual ability, and it's very boom or bust. It also regularly leaves their attacking shape and players isolated, hence the whopping 186 turnovers they've conceded in attacking play this season. Alan Dickens is the attack coach currently plying his trade at Leicester Tigers this season, and despite being a huge part of some great teams over the years, his job has been linked to termination more than once so far this season. He was appointed Leicester Tigers attack and backs coach this season during what has been a pretty frustrating campaign. He's previously spent 9 years as a coach at Northampton, a year as the defence coach for England Saxons, and led the under-20s programme for 4 seasons. He has clout, he has credibility, and his style of play would definitely fit with this new look Gloucester side. His game plan is built around having a strong box kicker, which Gloucester has, a pragmatic 10 that Gloucester will have, direct straight running centres, which Gloucester are growing, and using busy, practical wingers on the outside, like an Ollie Thorley to a younger Josh Bassett, or Wade to a fit Anthony Watson. Leicester aren't super pleasant on the eye, but you cannot deny that their backline is incredibly effective, considering the cogs that power that machine. Hopefully that would help rule out the rampant errors and mistakes that Gloucester are constantly making in their set plays. So there we have it, my longest fixing your club to date, and probably my most detailed. If you're watching this video on TikTok, make sure that you check out my YouTube channel, which is brand new. You will see my latest interview with Zach and Beau Ferrance about life in the Pro des Deux. Make sure you like and subscribe the video, and make sure that if you're watching this on TikTok, follow me for more. I post 3 to 5 times per day. I hope you enjoy my content.